What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Hushlife podcast. This week, Bmack is in the beautiful state of Wisconsin with great friend Josh Miller talking all things dogs. You definitely do not want to miss this episode. And if you are listening to this on any podcasting platform, please make sure you leave us a like and a review. It really helps the podcast, motivates us to create more content of this style for those of you who prefer to listen. Thanks, guys.
Boom. We're live.
Live.
Welcome back to another edition of the Hushlife podcast. I am looking over at a lake. I'm in the middle of the United States, Midwestern summers. And I'm going to say right now, the humidity has not been terrible.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Wait a couple days.
It did rain this morning, though, so it may materialize shortly.
Yeah, you spoke too soon.
I did spoke too soon. It brings me back to the early days in my life. Back in 2001, I actually lived in the Midwest. Some may know this, some may not. And it was post-college, and I was in the Minneapolis area. And somehow managed to get an internship job for sales and marketing with the Minnesota Vikings in the National Football League. And growing up a sports fan, I got to tell you, kind of felt like I hit a home run.
Oh, yeah. That's like every high school kid's dream.
I was a huge football fan growing up. Loved the NFL. I was a Seahawks fan, just having grown up in the Pacific Northwest. But the NFL was like the pinnacle of sports. And I don't exactly even know how I got the job. I don't know that I was qualified for it. I didn't have much skill set back then. But I honestly think I got the job because I was probably one of the only applicants that wasn't from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, here's a guy that's from Oregon, went to school at Arizona State. Probably not going to be like a huge fanboy.
Mm-hmm. Which you got to figure that most of their guys are. Most applicants, right?
I would imagine 99% of the applicants, huge Viking fans.
Oh, yeah.
So anyways, I did get the job, which was a fantastic experience for my life. Had a great leader and mentor by the name of Steve LaCroix, who was the VP of sales and marketing. Young guy, just really fantastic leader. And he encouraged me to get into sales. So it was like a year-long stint for the internship. And I didn't end up sticking with the sports marketing predominantly because primetime NFL season is also primetime hunting season.
Right.
And so there wasn't, if you're working for the NFL, although you only have 8 home games you got to be there for, at least back then, you still are prime time in the fall. Like training camp kicks off middle of July, and you don't typically finish the season until December. Mm-hmm. So there goes September elk hunts. There goes October rifle, mule deer hunts, water, the whole nine is gone.
Right. But the good news is, working for the Vikings, at least you weren't like going into January too. Like if you're working for the Packers, you'd have to work all through January every year too.
Touche. But it was a cool experience. It gave me an introduction to the Midwest. Although I only made $5.15 an hour, that was a little tough on the pocketbook. But the experience was worth the weight in gold, in my opinion.
Right.
But anyways, this trip has reminded me a lot of those days and the summer lake life and what have you. But I am joined by somebody that's become a good friend in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. It's I feel like a lot of things happen for a reason in life, and this is an example of one of those that seems to come to fruition. I'm going to introduce our guest here in a minute, but to kind of reflect back, some folks that follow along on our channel or on social may have been aware that my wife and I had to put down our yellow lab, Deucey Boy, of 13 amazing, incredible years early in 2022. And the amount of response that I received from so many people was really overwhelming. And I think dogs are just so special. If you have them, you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. If you have a working dog, you really know what I'm talking about. But they become such a huge part of your family. They are just incredible companions. And man, when you got to say goodbye, talk about an absolute heartbreaker. I don't think there's anything I've been through in my life, and maybe that's just, I've been super fortunate so far, that was as hard as having to put him down. we knew that he wasn't doing great because we found out last September that he developed a form of cancer and just suddenly started having issues with calcium level and issues like with his organs and stuff. And so we were fortunate that we got a few more months with him to kind of like prepare ourselves. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't sudden, but it didn't make it any easier. We threw the kitchen sink at him from medication and everything we could try to do with cancer. But we also valued his quality of life, and we didn't want to keep him breathing. We wanted to keep him alive. And I think once that point in time comes where you got to make that hard decision, we both knew we were on the same page. We woke up one morning and he just really couldn't get around. And we had to make the tough phone call, and I honestly wasn't able to do it. Like Corey had to do it for me. But we did it in our home, and it was comfortable. And we got to say our goodbyes, and it was the right way to do it. But man, was it hard. Mm-hmm. And from that experience, a lot of folks reached out because it's just relatable. I think all of us that have owned a dog have been through that. And a longtime acquaintance that I've met a few times, but not often, by the name of Jeff Lander. He's the owner and operator of Primitive Outfitting. So he runs a really cool spring bear hunting camp in British Columbia. And then he also runs a moose hunting operation, and then a really fantastic mule deer upland bird hunting operation in Alberta later in the year. But Jeff reached out to me and was touched by what we had shared in our story with Deuce. And he just said, man, I don't want to seem overbearing, and it might not be the right time, but when you're ready, I need you to meet somebody. And I'm just so grateful that Jeff did that. And he was very passionate about you and I meeting. Mm-hmm. It's like he just knew. I don't know. It was very interesting. And right after we put Deuce down, the next day, my wife and I flew to Mexico just to kind of get away. We needed a break. We needed a stress reliever. And during that point in time, she, after a couple days, after some tears and some margaritas, she pulled up this Instagram page and just showed it to me and said, hey, look at this breeder. Like, these guys look like they got a cool operation. And I didn't think a whole lot about it, but it happened to be your and your wife's page. So there's another little angle there. And then a few years back, somebody that we're friends with in the industry had picked up a real nice looking yellow lab, and I had reached out to him and said, hey man, where'd you get that dog? Great looking dog. And he had given me the name of a kennel, and I was like, oh cool. And I never really thought about it again because the timing wasn't right. But as I reflected back and kind of started looking at the puzzle pieces, that person who got that dog also came from you. So there's all these variations. So that's the lead up to who I'm joined by today. His name is Josh Miller. He and his wife, Whitney Miller, own Riverstone Kennels. They are the host of Duck Dogs podcast, and it's spelled D-U-K. Mm-hmm. We'll get into that here shortly. And then they also own a training program that is online based called Retriever Roadmap for those that are interested in walking down their own path with their own dog. Mm-hmm. And so, Josh, welcome to the podcast, man.
Man, it's so good to have you guys here. And I cannot echo what you just said enough. You know, I think the longer that I live, the more I believe in that things happen for a reason. You know, and it's like everything that you just talked about. You know, it's difficult to get close to somebody. Yeah. I feel like, especially in an industry where like usually people are connecting with you to, you know, for a leverage reason, right? Business wise, personal wise. But like, man, like in a very short period of time, we went from not knowing you guys to like Whitney and I genuinely love you and Corey. You know, we feel like super close, talking on a regular basis outside of dogs, you know, turkey hunt together already, you know, and shoot, you know, we just met each other 6 months ago or whatever it was, you know. So it's just everything you talked about was, to me, it's just good people lead you to more good people. And it's just so important to keep your circle with the right people, because it just, you know, it just fills your cup, you know, more and more. But as much as I hate everything that you went through, I'm incredibly happy with, where it led, and obviously our relationship with that. And, literally while you're telling the story of Deuce, and I don't mean to continue the sadness of this whole thing. It's kind of a somber way to start this episode out, but you're telling that story, and right above you is a photo of my first dog, Easton. Yeah. And man, like, it went through all the same stuff. It's like I literally wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have my business. I wouldn't be on the property I have. I wouldn't have anything that I have in this world today if it wasn't for that dog. That's how impactful that dog was to me. And it's like you fast forward to the end, and it's like, did everything exactly what you're talking about, right? Like, nobody likes talking about the last day, but it's one thing that every one of us, if you get a dog, just like you're getting tomorrow, you're voluntarily signing up for that heartache again. But if the journey wasn't worth it, none of us would go through it, right? Like it is so impactful, and they just fill our lives, and there's so much joy that comes about that. And it's like, I look at that dog, and it broke my heart. I cannot tell you the number of days I prayed, like legitimately prayed, that I would wake up and he would just peacefully went into sleep. Like, that was, to me, that was like the absolute best situation. Very few of us get the opportunity to do that, which we have to make that tough decision. And, for me, everybody always asks, like, when do you know? When do you know? And you can't explain it. You just know. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think what happens is you hit a point where you realize you're doing it for you and not for them. Yeah. And I think, for those of us that truly, have our dogs as such a part of our family, when that hits you, it's like, it's time,
There is that fine line.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful too that my wife and I were on the same page, and we weren't, battling back and forth with each other on one thinks we should continue and the other doesn't. Mm-hmm. So that was, assuring. And man, I needed her and she needed me, and that was just a no fun moment. But to your point, it's the eventual conclusion to every dog you own. Mm-hmm. And I feel grateful that we got 13 years. There's many cases where it's much sooner. So it did lead us to want to have another puppy in our life. Mm-hmm. We've shared this too. Like, we've not been able to have children. And years ago, we shared kind of a little bit of our story there, and also overwhelmed by the response from that. And so, like, we need a dog to make, like, our family complete. Mm-hmm. And that's what gets excited. We wanted to take a little break and kind of have some time to ourselves and do some traveling. And the amount of care that Deuce required, like, the last couple months was a lot. My wife is a rock star. She literally kept him alive because his condition made it to where he wasn't super interested in eating a lot. Mm-hmm. And so she was, like, hand feeding him with a syringe and making sure he had the nutrients to continue to fight, because he was able to, like, get around and stuff at that point. He just wasn't super hungry. But we took some time, and on that Mexico trip, I think was the very first sign of, like, we need to start considering what our next dog's going to be. And to be honest, it was a little overwhelming. We got Deuce off of a pull tab number on Sportsman's Warehouse that my dad found. And I'll be damned if he wasn't the best freaking pull tab dog you could ever find. And so it's like, it's been 13 years, right? I hadn't looked for a dog since. Where do you even begin? So we naturally started looking at, like, the KSL classified ads and, other things. And it's just overwhelming because you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. Nothing against backyard folks that are kind of just running this, breeding the dog they have. Several of those are great, but you don't really know the backstory. You don't know what the conditions are. There's just a lot of unknowns buying them off, like, a classified ad. And then, I got a message from Jeff shortly thereafter, and it didn't take a whole lot of time for us to kind of realize you guys have built a really nice business, and just doing the research and looking into it, it was super eye-opening. Mm-hmm. And that at least brought a little bit of, like, enjoyment to the fact that we don't have to worry Because we reached out to a few places, we didn't even get like an email response. I'm like, man, must be nice to have a business where you don't even have to reply to inquiries about, your product or your service. So that's that is kind of like how we got there. Yeah,
I gotta tell you my side of that story
for sure,
because Jeff was playing middleman on this thing, right?
He indeed was.
So he reaches out to me and he goes, man, like, you got to watch this film, right? And it was you guys talking about losing dues, and like I'm just like, man, like I don't want to watch that, because like I've been through it so many times now that it's like it kills me, right? Because like naturally you reflecting is probably, I assume, the reason so many people empathize with your situation in that video, because so many of us have gone through it, we can relate to it. And even if you can't relate because you haven't gone through it, you're likely looking at your four-legged buddy at your side going, oh my gosh, someday that will be me, so it's relatable to so many of us. And he's like, man, you gotta watch. I'm like, okay. And of course, killed me. But what was neat about it to me is it did give me a feel for you guys.
Yeah.
Like, these guys genuinely, love this dog. They care about, the dog. There's, it seems like, good people. And so he's like, hey, you got to message, got to message Bmack. And I'm like, I'm not messaging him, And he's like, you got to message him, dude. I'm like, why can't you just like he's like, I've already told him about you, and I don't know. Like, I love Jeff to death. But, like, I don't know, like, sometimes he feeds me lines where he's like, hey, you got to do this. I set you up. And then I'll, like, call somebody, and they're like, who are you?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm just like, and Jeff just knows, like, you just got to meet this person. You just got to get out there. And I'm like, man, like, I remember word for word. He's like, why not just message him? And word for word, I said, I don't know. It feels a little fanboyish. And his response was, what? With, like, 5 question marks. And, I don't know, like, I think I sat out for like another day. And the biggest reason why I think I didn't reach out right away is because when I went through, going back to Easton, when I went through that with Easton, and he was in my arms when he passed, I literally felt his last heartbeat. Like, it was so impactful for me. And we have the kennel, right? So we've got 35 dogs that need to be trained. And fortunately enough, I have a team of people and, trainer's office, care. So, like, I don't need to be there if something's going on. Well, I needed to not be there. Like, I just mentally, I couldn't do it, right? I mean, it's literally the house that he built, like, it is too raw, right? So I bet I took a week or more before I could actually, go up to the kennel. And there's actually a cool story, because Jeff was a part of that, too, with the dog that he had in. And, it's like, gosh, I mean, they're just, there's so much there, right? And it's a journey for sure, and it's I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going with that, but
walk us through the story of kind of how you got into the training component of it and how Easton tied into that.
Yeah, so really what I like to tell people is I was kind of the black sheep of my family. So my family being in Wisconsin, deer hunting, specifically rifle, is a big deal. And love archery hunting. I just never was crazy about rifle hunting whitetails in Wisconsin. And I love that people do it, just wasn't my thing, And so we had a cabin, or my grandpa, I should say, had a cabin in northern Wisconsin, and we would go up there every weekend. I shouldn't say as a family, the boys would all go up there. And so my uncle would be up there, my grandpa would be up there, my dad, my brothers. And we'd get up there, and it was a deer hunting trip. And I just loved duck hunting. I don't know why. Like, my dad wasn't a big duck hunter. Like I have, behind you, I have that little blue wing teal decoy. I had 3 of those. That was how I duck hunted. Like, and they're these old little junky, like, they don't even hardly look like a duck, right? But that's how I hunted. So what I would do is, they would go out. My grandpa had 80 acres across the road, but his cabin was on a lake. So they would go out in the morning, go deer hunt, go get in their stand. I'd get in a little canoe with my 3 little blue-winged teal decoys. And there's no way there's any blue-winged teal, at least in that area, anytime past September, right? So it's like, I have my 3 blue-winged teal decoys. I paddle out, sit on this island, hope to see a duck. And, I mean, if I shot a duck, it was an awesome day, and it was just... From that, I had a passion that grew of, like, I want to get more into this, so I really got into calling, really enjoyed learning how to call, got more sideways looks than I know what to do with when I was driving. I'm 16 years old and I'm blowing on a duck collar or goose call in my truck, and people are like, what in the world is going on there? But I just loved it. But you do it by yourself enough, like you want to have someone to share it with, right? And so my way of doing that was a dog. And of course, you know, as a waterfowler or an upland hunter, I think a lot of us want to have that dog for what the dog brings to the hunt. I mean, I'm at a point that I would rather not go out than go out without a dog.
Yeah.
You know, but at the time we had 2 labs. Neither one of them hunted. Neither one of them, quite frankly, cared to even play fetch. Like, they were just, you know, great house dogs. But you know, my dad wasn't a bird hunter, right? So we didn't train him, didn't do anything with him. And so I was told that I had to buy Easton if I wanted him, which I didn't know, of course, it was him yet. But so I umpired Little League games, saved up my pennies, and basically did exactly what you did, which newspaper ad, you know, labs, you know, for sale, exactly how I tell people not to shop now, because I hit the lottery.
Yeah.
You hit the lottery. You don't hit the lottery very often.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like you get lucky once, awesome. But then you learn, you do it better, you put the odds in your favor, you know, like, anyway, get Easton. And I worked with him all the time. I have a very obsessive personality. If I get into something, I want to be the best. I want to do it to the best of my ability. And so I just pour myself into whatever, you know, I'm doing. And so in high school, I was a 3-sport athlete. I played football, basketball, and baseball. Had a lot, you know, kind of going on with, you know, family life and everything. And so my time with Easton turned into my me time. Like, I looked forward to that time every single day. So I watched every DVD I could, read every book I could. You know, I tell people, and I very seriously think this, I probably made more mistakes with Easton than every dog I've ever trained since him combined. But he was just that dog that dealt with it. You know, like, I'd make a mistake, he was forgiving, we'd move forward. And not every dog is like that, you know, but he was. So Sportsman's Warehouse, funny you bring that up, because that's where my story leads me. So there was a Sportsman's Warehouse in Minnesota, and actually the guy who owned Sportsman's Warehouse and started it lived like 2 miles from where we're sitting right now.
No way.
Yeah, so kind of funny. But so I'm in the Sportsman's Warehouse, I'm in a dog aisle, just looking at the dog's stuff, and there's an older gentleman in the aisle. He just probably saw a young kid, 'cause I think it was probably 17, because so I got Easton when I was 15 going on 16. And so I was probably 17, somewhere in there. And he comes over, he goes, "You got a dog?" I'm like, "Yeah," you know, kind of small talk, and he's kind of feeling me out. Well, it turns out he's the secretary for the local retriever club. He's like, "Man, you really should come down, check out what we're all about. We'd love to get younger people, you know, involved," you know, and so it gives me contact info. And I wasn't going to do it. Yeah, I think probably out of nerves more than anything. Like, you put yourself out there and like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
sure,
I have a dog I think is good, but you know, I don't want to go, you know, put myself down or get knocked off my pedestal, right? But I did, and I went over there, and I had no idea the level that I had Easton trained at. I mean, he was phenomenal. I mean, we went in there, and I think, you know, this good they were really big into AKC hunt tests, but also they were running field trials. So I kind of went like where they were training for more of the hunt test stuff at first, you know, so they have junior, season, or senior, and then master level. So I think at first they were thinking, well, we're going to, you know, ease you into the junior level. Well, by the end of that session, I mean, I was running with the master level dogs and standing out. I mean, I had no idea, you know, I'm trying to do what these books and DVDs tell me to do. And so everyone's raving, right? They're like, you gotta campaign him. You got to do this. You got to do that. Like, I didn't even know what campaigning meant, you know? I'm like, okay, you know, and a little overwhelming. But I remember going back and like telling mom and dad how awesome he did and awesome he was. And like, I remember my dad was just like, yeah, like, we knew he was good, you know, but it's like, it's different though when you see him up against all these other dogs and he's excelling. So probably about a month after that, this group put on what they called a fun run. You know, so it was a field trial that it didn't count for anything. So you didn't get points, but it was to try to bring new people into the sport, encourage them. Everyone's hoorah, like, yeah, there were placements, but not real. Like, it was more of a learning thing, right? And so we went, and Easton won the trial, and it was the most expensive piece of material, that little blue ribbon that I got, that I've ever received in my life. Because from that point forward, I was all in. You know, I was like, now we're running hunt tests. Now we're traveling, you know, to go do this stuff. I mean, man, like I couldn't afford to put the gas in my truck to get to the event, let alone pay the entry fee to get in, you know. And but Easton, he just special, man. Like he was that dog that just made people say, wow. The number of times that he had a retrieve on a hunt, or like a moment in a event, like people still tell me about stuff that they remember Easton doing, and he just had this thing about him. And at the time, I'm like, you know, and I remember this vividly at an event. I had a really, you know, an older guy, super nice guy. Unfortunately, he's not with us anymore. But at the time, he came up. He's like, young man, he's like, you get a dog like that once in a lifetime, and you got him as your first dog. So have fun with the rest of them. And I remember that to this day. But I'm here to tell you that's not true.
Yeah.
You know, like I can tell you, like, I never thought I'd have that special dog again. Well, and then I get Brock.
Yeah.
And then I get Strike. And then I get like they're special dogs. I just believe you get, like, these dogs, to me, just like people, they're inserted into your life when you kind of need it the most, right? So like Easton, for me, Brock is special. Brock is better than Easton ever was. But I don't know if I would have been able to elevate Brock to where he is without the lessons Easton taught me, right? And then, you know, and then that trickles into Strike, right? And then like what I can do with Strike because of what these guys taught, and just like, it's just like, you know, it's just, they're special for their own reasons, you know, and you don't ever fill a hole. You just, you know, you just create that new spot in your heart. And so it's just like I'm sure you're going to experience with this puppy, you know, like I'm sure you're going to love, like, you're not replacing.
No.
You're bringing, you know, new in, and you're fulfilling a spot in your family that is voided right now, you know, and that's kind of what you're looking for.
So going back to Easton, and after you kind of had these initial entries and really started to see a ton of success, what did that end up transitioning into? Like, how did you go from a young teenage kid that just like had a hobby of waterfowling, and then, you know, you get this dog and like starting to really develop a passion for the teaching portion of the dog stuff, but yet you're still super young. What is the transition period from, like, once you kind of got up and running and realized you really, A, have something here with Easton, and then B, you could see yourself like really getting into deeper levels of training? How did you kind of bridge that gap from transitioning to a young person just out of high school to later, bit, you know, down the road through college and early in life? Yeah.
So what's funny is that, like, of the guys that I know and gals that have been successful, like really successful with the dog stuff, the very few of them have set out and was like, this is what I want to do for a living. Like, there's just something like an Easton for me that leads you down that path. Him being successful made me confident, made me go, oh, I love this, right? Like, if he wasn't good, I never would have enjoyed it. I wouldn't have looked forward to my time to train with him. I never would have been, you know, successful in front of other people, which made people think that I was great. He was great. I was certainly not great at that time for sure. But it gave me the confidence of wanting to do it, you know. So at the time, it sounds silly now, but like, I thought I was going to be a professional baseball player. Like, that was my thing, right? Like, that's what everybody was telling me. That's what, like, in my head where I was at, that's what I was going to college to go do. Like, this is all my eggs there. But in the summers, what I would do is, you know, I had ball, but I would train underneath different trainers, you know, because I really enjoyed it. And if I was going to have a job, I wanted to have a job I enjoyed. And so I started learning what people do, why people do it, what I liked that people did, what I didn't like that people did, and kind of starting to understand, you know, the ins and outs of this thing. And one of the things, probably the biggest thing that I learned, was that, like your experience, okay, no phone call back, no follow through, no follow up. This isn't a hobby. If you're going to make this a business, it is a business. It needs to be treated as that. But so many people get into their hobby, want to make their hobby their profession, but it still stays a hobby, you know, and it can't be. You know, it needs to be a business. I learned that very early on. So I started kind of looking at this and watching it. When I realized that I, wasn't going to be as good as Ken Griffey Jr., then I was like, okay, I kind of throttled it back down to this is what I want to do. And at the time, Easton was still, pretty. He was getting older, right? But he was still pretty sharp. And so I remember when I started the kennel, I had a mentor of mine by the name of Rick Grant, and Rick is probably one of the most significant people that I've had in my life. So I trained under Rick, mentored under him. He taught me a lot. Both what to do and what not to do. We talked pretty openly about that. And he trained in a different era than I did. I think he was a little more old school in the approach, but the dogs were also more old school. Like when Rick retired, he literally called me. He's like, "Hey man, like I think I'm done." And I'm like, "What? Like you're not gonna retire? Like you're not the kind of retire." He's like, "Man, like there's a reason you're being successful. And it's because these dogs are different today than they were 20, 30 years ago. Like back then, like my approach worked really well. Now I have a hard time communicating with some of these dogs because they're so much softer. Like they're more of, your companion, like I want that fire breather that I can smack over the head with a 2x4 and it doesn't faze him, right? Like that's not my dogs, Yeah. And so, he's like, man, like so anyway, rewind. I'm going to start my own business, right? First, to get to that point was extremely intimidating, because I have a fiance at this point. We're going to start a life together, and I'm going to take a leap of faith I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket. Fortunately enough, my wife has always been my biggest supporter. She's always believed in me, even maybe when she shouldn't. And that's really why I had the confidence to do it. So I call Rick. I'm like, man, like, how do you get started in this? And he kind of walks me through things. So for about probably 5-6 months, I was trying to scrounge up, like, how am I going to start this kennel? Like, I had purchased a house. It had a shed on it. How I was going to makeshift that shed, I didn't know. But you started looking at kennel runs was like thousands of dollars just to get kennel runs. I don't have thousands of dollars, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, how to make this work? So Rick calls me one day, and he's like, hey, I know you're trying to get this going, and I really believe that you have an extreme talent for this, and I have a way that I can help you. I have 6 kennel runs. They're outdoors. They've been out there for 20 years. They're rusty. They're junky, but it'll get you going if you want them. And I'll give them to you.
Wow.
So I borrow a trailer, drive down there, disassemble them, get them back here, put them back up, and I bet I spent the next week and a half. I had a file, and I literally filed every piece of chain link so it didn't look rusty anymore, and like tried to polish up the best I could. And when I got done, it was late one night. I got done, I kind of stepped back, and I kind of had my hand over my face. I'm like looking at these kennel runs, and I was just in my own little world. So Whitney, my at the time fiance, now wife, walks in. She goes, "What are you thinking about?" And I kind of snap out of my daze, and I look at her, and I'm like, "How are we ever going to get 6 dogs in the train?" Like, it was just completely beyond me. Well, flash forward to today, in the kennel right now, we have 35 dogs in for training. We're full all year round. We have trained dogs from 49 states. We have trained dogs from 6 different countries. I mean, just like, it's incredible, and just the way it started to the way it is now. And at the time, man, like when I had those kennels up and I'm getting going, I called every guy that I mentored under. I'm like, man, like if there's a dog you don't want, I want it. So I was getting I had 2 dogs try to eat me. Like I had serious aggressive cases. I had serious anxiety cases, huge, mega bad gun shyness cases. We had dogs that came in that were abused by, other trainers, other people, stuff like that. But it's also how I made my name, was I could take these severe cases, flip them around, and do something with them, And so it was really neat, kind of, looking back on where we came from 12 years ago to where we are today. It's been a ride.
Man, through that process, it's like so many stories you hear in life or entrepreneurship. A lot of times when you might get to a point where some people will deem you as successful or what have you. A lot of people don't know the backstory, right? And the history and the challenges, the grit, the perseverance that led you to the success. A lot of times people just look at what they see current day. Like, wow, man, these guys have like a full kennel. They've got like high demand for their puppies. They're just killing life, man. It must be so easy. And, like nobody understands that it took time. I saw something recently that said, nothing that's like fantastic, or how's the saying goes? It's something along the lines of like anything that you see in life that's appears to be successful likely has 10 years of effort behind it. And just through like the people that we know, they're entrepreneurs themselves, I would say that's pretty dang accurate. Looking even back to how we kind of got our story started and how the channel formed and all of us kind of coming together. It's about a decade. And I think there's something super refreshing, even though it can be exceptionally difficult, in waking up every single day and being your own boss. It's frightening at times. It can come with a lot of stress and anxiety and things of that nature, but the fulfillment, particularly when you finally get to a point where you can provide for your family, and maybe you have some employees and you're providing for their family, the just like the reward side of that is just exceptional. Being your own entity, your own business. You don't have to go to work anymore and report to some other person. You get to do that, and you get to make the mistakes, but also the adjustments to come through that, and the fulfillment of hopefully being able to do this thing you love continually, like for your career. And it's very unique.
It not only is it unique, but I think it's something that a lot of people have visions of doing, but there's something that holds them back, right? Like, I can't tell you the number of people that talk to me about, I have this idea and but it's scary, right? I mean, it's hard to so I'll tell you about, the current kennel that we're at right now. So when I had my first kennel, so that house I talked about with the shed that I made work, right? And then that, 6 kennels went to 12, 12 went to 16, and then I was full. So I knew I had to expand. Technically, I wasn't legal on the property that I was sitting on per the state and county requirements of what constituted a legal kennel. And so I was trying to like get by, right? So there was a property we were leasing, which is the property we're on now, that when I say leasing, it was like I gave the guys like a case of beer to be able to run the dogs in the hayfield. It wasn't really a lease, but we got to know those guys that were going to sell it. We were able to come in and buy it. But the reason we were able to buy it is because I put every penny that I made away, because I knew that we were going to have to grow this someday. And so at closing, I wrote a check I never thought I'd be able to write, but you never would have known that we even had it because of how we lived, right? Because I knew I was pushing to this dream. But then 2, I had a truck that wouldn't run half the time. I literally had to work on my truck to get it running to get to the closing. And that's how we have the property we have today. But this is a part nobody, I can count on one hand probably the number of people that know. So after this podcast gets out, I can't say that anymore. But we lived, so when the kennel was being built, we had to sell our house, of course, to pay for everything, right? So we're waiting for the kennel to get built. The kennel went up first so that we could have an income, and then the house was getting built. So we borrowed a really old like camping trailer, and Whitney and I lived in that trailer from I want to say May or June through end of November, and end of November in Wisconsin, right? So and we would shower in the dog shower that's in the kennel, and so that it was parked right behind the kennel. The lowest moment I've ever felt in my life is Whitney and I were living in that trailer, and I went to Subway to get us dinner, and the card declined because we were overdrawn on funds. Literally didn't have enough money to buy my wife a Subway sandwich. The lowest I've ever felt in my life. And here I've got this property I've worked so hard for, this building that's coming up. This is like my dream. And this is one of those moments, right? It's like the fear sets in, and it's like, gosh, did I screw up? like, was this a terrible decision? Am I going to lose everything? Am I, like some serious, doubt. And the reason I just have never told that story is because, one, it's like one of those things. It's like, that's a prideful thing for me. Like, looking back on it, it's like, I could have let that bury me, but instead it made me pin my ears back and go, I'll never allow this feeling to happen again. I will never allow my family to be in this situation again. And it just pushed me. And so that's why, like, I level. So the kennel in, I think it was 2022. So I think it was 2015 won Emerging Business of the Year for the state of Wisconsin. The following year, I was runner-up for Emerging Entrepreneur for the state of Wisconsin. Little Riverstone Kennels. Like, there had to have been so many other qualified places, but the way that I looked at it is like, I was running a business. Like, yes, I was training dogs. Yes, I was using what I had as a talent, but it was running a business. That, and I feel like that's what has made us successful in this, is that you run it like a business. It's emotional. I love the dogs I work with. I love the people I get to work with, right? But at the end of the day, if you don't run it like a business, your customers are never going to be satisfied, right? You're not going to run as smoothly and efficiently as you could. You're not going to be able to handle, like, we have employees that are like, Dave's been working for 10 years now, working for me. He's still here because we're able to take care of him. We take care of him because we run it like a business, right? And so that's where, like, so many of my peers that are in this, that I see that are in it and out, it's because it's run like a hobby, And so, like, yes, we're a kennel. Yes, we love the dogs. Yes, we love all this stuff. But at the same time, like, it's our business,
I think that you can see that in a lot of industries, if you're trying to find, like, somebody to do electrical, HVAC, plumbing, landscape work, you name it. There's so many, like, mom and pop kind of run entrepreneurship industries and businesses, and a lot of them are highly skilled in their field of expertise or whatever, but not necessarily a lot of them know how to run a business. Mm-hmm. You actually can even see it a lot in, like, the dental field, where you have dentists that are phenomenal dentistry, but they are horrific at running a business. Mm-hmm. And there's companies called DSOs, dental service organizations, that'll come in and, like, operate the business side, and then just let the dentist do dentistry. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that certainly stands out when you start looking at a lot of those types of crafts, is maybe you don't get the greatest communication. Mm-hmm. Maybe, like, the customer service isn't quite on par with what you hope in your head. Mm-hmm. And it kind of goes hand in hand with any of these industries, is you really start to see separation, and companies set themselves apart when they just have these basic fundamentals, right? Like, hey, we'll actually call you back. We'll send you an email. We'll provide communication. We'll get back to you if you have a question and a message. Just, to me, it seems, exceptionally basic growing up my whole career, like a corporate setting where things are really polished. There's a lot of procedures and systems and people, but so many like small businesses, you don't see that. And talk about a place to differentiate yourself because of the mom and pop feel that I'm sure, a lot of maybe breeders have. They're probably great breeders, and they're probably great at training dogs, but they're not necessarily great at running a business. And I think certainly from our experience, that's what I've noticed a big difference. Like, as we've been going down this road of getting a puppy into our hands and joining our family, Whitney, your wife, who I'll have you tell more about kind of her role in the business, but her level of, like, communication and detail and organization is really, phenomenal. Mm-hmm. It's just next level. And talking with so many other people that have gotten dogs, like my own parents and many other people, where they're not, like, on site or in the same community as the puppy, and they need to either have it flown in or they have to go pick it up. You just don't necessarily see that. Mm-hmm. And man, does that feel good, particularly when you're at some kind of a distance, and you're excited. You got this new family member you're going to be joining in, and those little details, man, they make such a huge difference. Not only just in the perception from your customer base, but also, like, with your just building, like, your culture and your employees, and like you said, you're running it like a legitimate business, because it is. Mm-hmm. It's just one that you happen to have a ton of passion behind.
Yeah. What's interesting for us from the business side of it is how interesting our communication is with people that reach out to us. And so we look at it as a business, and maybe you get it too, but there are very few businesses, or I have a lot of entrepreneur friends. I've tried to surround myself with great entrepreneurs so that I can feed off of them and learn from them. I'm always trying to elevate my knowledge. And so it's interesting how many questions we get on a daily basis via email, via social media. That is, my dog's doing this, how do I fix it? Right? Well, like, I know a lot of my entrepreneur friends are like, you don't owe that person a response. Like, what are they doing for you? Are they paying for that response? Are they paying for your time? You have paying customers that are their dogs. You owe more time to them. It's not how we operate. Like, we're going to help people, But it is so interesting because, to your point, I wouldn't call my electrician and be like, hey, this is going on. Tell me how to fix it, where to get the parts, what's the price I should pay? Tell me, walk me through how to do it. And then thanks, click, Yeah. But I can't tell you the hours a week that I spend on the phone helping people through giving free advice.
Yeah.
It's very interesting in that way. But I think at times, maybe from an outside, because my hobby is working with my dog, I want to talk to somebody that does this, at a professional level, but it's still perceived as a hobby, right? So it's more of a conversation. That's interesting. Yeah, it really is, because we've met a lot of great people through doing that. Of course, they're the people that abuse it. They'll call you every day, and finally you just have to try to politely be like, look, man, like, I have people that pay me, to have these conversations with them because their dogs are in here. Like, I need to prioritize, that time. Most people are good about it, but we do give a lot of free advice. But I mean, that's kind of the cool part about the social media side of it too, is you can connect with people and you can help people out. And that's where Retriever Roadmap comes in. So now we have an online video library that you can, okay, your dog is doing this. That's great. It is, in the intermediate, section of Retriever Roadmap and the third level, whatever it is, like, break it down. That's your answer.
Yeah.
Like, you can go watch it. You can rewatch it. You can know what to do from there. You can build whatever dog you want, right? That has been really neat because it gives people an option to actually watch it, right? And then, going back to Whitney, like, Whitney, I think she's fantastic, but it's good to know that, other people obviously think so too. She has the best job in the world. It is not easy. I'll be the first one to tell you that, because, I mean, generally speaking, so like today, our alarms are off at 3:50 in the morning. So we try to be like, I'm at the kennel by 4:15. We're getting, everything done before light. All the chores, there's stuff that we have to prepare for, get the trailers loaded up, right? Okay, now it's light enough. Now we got to get, our work done. I mean, shoot, by 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you have almost a full day of work in, right? But business hours, you got to be available till at least 4, right? So then you got, so my team is fantastic in how they handle that.
Yeah.
It's really easy to burn out, especially when you're out in the sun all day. You're working with animals that naturally are going to test you, right? There's a lot to that. Whitney has the best job in that when people come and talk with her, like, she's literally making people's day every time she hands somebody that puppy.
Yeah.
And the business side of it to me for that is the communication that she does. But then, because you might be asking yourself, like, why do I care if where I get my dog, whatever kennel, is an actual, like, why does it matter if it's a business? A lot of the things that you had said, but one of the things for me is that we're spending the money and the investment to do things right. Right? So, like, health testing, I think we're up to 22 health tests that you can run on a Labrador Retriever. We run all of them because we want to make sure that the puppies that are being put on this earth by our choosing are as happy and healthy as we can possibly make happen. Of course, with live animals, there's always, potential thing that could come up, but we know we're doing everything in our control. If you find a place that is having, maybe, 1 litter a year, 1 litter every few years, probably, not always, probably not happening, because why would someone put thousands and thousands of dollars into this, right? Because it is expensive.
Sure.
But for us, it's worth that investment, right? And so there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Whitney does an amazing job trying to, like, showcase and document some of her role. And I think she probably downplays it, but she's an integral part of your guys' business because she literally handles and operates the entire like puppy and / new business acquisition component of your business, where people are coming in to make a deposit on a puppy, pick them up. And then the thing that stood out to me too, just like her passion for the, taking care of the mamas, the whole whelping process, really phenomenal. Like I'd never seen it at that level of detail before, because most places probably don't show that much about, the time the mom starts kind of going into the labor and like all the details of going to the vet. And it's such a science now. And she has like a really exceptional amount of knowledge, and then also the passion behind it. And she does a great job of showcasing it on your guys' like Instagram page. The 47 different alarms set when like that mama is due to go into labor. She's basically waking up every 45 minutes to check on her. The temperature controls, the whelping boxes, like all the things that you guys do to document the birth of the new puppies and the daily, measurements and weights. And there's just so much detail there that both my wife and I had never really experienced or seen before. And I thought that was super fascinating to watch that whole process. So, we've been able to kind of see this time and time again through various litters that have hit the floor. And then, once you finally like are accepted for, hey, this is your litter, and you start kind of getting that communication, boy, it's neat to see, because the weekly emails and updates also come with like a weekly video. So you're watching your little one literally like from week 1 until you end up picking them up at week 7. And super cool, process to see. And she's just so passionate about the puppy side of it.
She is the biggest part of our business, and I love that she has this role, because before we were doing the breeding part of it, and I can share that at some point too, but it was just the training side. And she was a big part of it then too. She was handling, all the books. She was handling, basically all the stuff that I didn't want to do, and she's a saint for doing it. But everyone would come here and be, Josh, you did an awesome job. Thank you. And I'd be like, Whitney was a part of it. You didn't see it. Whitney was a part of it too, and she never once complained, never once wanted, any recognition. She was just doing her role. Well, now she is the role. Right, like everything starts with her. And if you think about her job, she has to play, communicator, right? She has to play business owner. She has to play accountant. She has to play nurse, giving the puppies the whelping. She has to play veterinarian when something goes wrong. Administer shots. Give this, give that. How do I get this puppy out? I have literally watched her on numerous occasions have a puppy be born, stillborn, completely lifeless. She brings the puppy back to life.
Yeah.
One of the absolute most, I don't think I've seen anything more amazing in my life. Yeah. I mean, to watch that and understand the significance. And then when you see that puppy go home, you go, that puppy shouldn't be here. And if the puppy's anywhere else, like I would challenge you to find someone more knowledgeable than Whitney on what she does.
Yeah.
I mean, she is just unbelievably fantastic. That puppy wouldn't be here, and so you watch the family get excited and like, that little puppy licking everybody's face, and how this puppy's going to be an integral part of this family. Shouldn't be here, but Whitney made it happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she never tells people that kind of stuff, as far as like, she, in a braggy way. Like she might tell like, hey, this is how, the puppy, but she's never like a look at me, I did this, anything like that. It is incredible. And so the roles that she has to play, the hats she has to wear, and she does it in a way that when you talk to her, you would think that you're the only client that she has. That is a talent.
For sure.
I mean, I hate when I hear people say, oh, we're just so busy. Everybody's busy. How do you handle yourself when you're busy? Do you stay composed? Do you give the time of day? Do you, or do you let your stress and anxiety, seep into everybody else? Yeah. That's a culture.
Yeah, I mean, her skill set is unique at that. I mean, customer service on the 99th percentile of what you would hope for. Walk us through a little bit about, so you established the business through the training, right? Through some heartache, and eventually got it to a point where you could kind of take the ultimate risk and purchase a piece of property and start to, kind of build out not only your residence, but you're also the actual business operations, the kennel, the office, the puppy area. How did you guys kind of transition into both having the kennel for breeding and then also the training that you kind of built your foundation on.
So naturally, when you have the kennel, breeding makes sense, right? From a lot of levels, right? Because you can start the relationship with an owner early on. You can have an idea of why that puppy was bred for what the background's like, what the lines are like, and then you can then train that dog throughout. So it really does. It's a great synergy, right? But I didn't have a reason of why. Like, I'm a big why guy. Like, if we're going to do something, tell me why. Like, if you can tell me why, let's do it. If you can't tell me why, like, I'm not into doing something just to do it. Again, obsessive personality, want to be the best. I'm not going to do something just to do it. So I didn't have a why, right? Like, I have, I feel, so in my career, like, I got into the retriever stuff, the hunt test field trials, loved that part of it. And then one of my mentors, not Rick, but another guy, once told me, he's like, you'll never see a retriever trainer go be successful field trialing, pointers, because they're so different. Me being a stubborn, hard-headed kid goes, well, that's a challenge. And then, I go do it. So, fast forward 3 years, I've got, 4 horses, a horse trailer. I'm trialing a number of dogs, and we had an incredibly successful field trial career, right? So I have, go ahead.
Walk people through that maybe aren't as familiar with the difference between, obviously, the retriever training, field trials, and what you're talking about on horses and pointers. Like, what is that?
Yeah, so with retrievers, we're looking for a number of things, how they mark. So mark could be watching, a bird go down, going and picking that up, a blind retrieve. They don't know where it is, so you have to send them, use their whistles, hand signals. Pointers, very different. Right, so pointing dog is out there hunting, finds a bird, establishes what we call a point, which is you don't move. And then the field trials, you have to go flush the bird, shoot, and they cannot move. They have to be calm and steady, watch that bird. They can't go just going after it, chasing it. So it shows not only the talent, but the training, right? They have to be very under control. The reason we do it off horseback, one, because you can cover more ground, but two, it's kind of that kind of historical, this is how you like they still do it down south a lot. Like Georgia's a big spot for those plantations that still do quail hunts like that, but it's traditional, right? Like horses were a part of that upland game hunting, specifically in the south, and so we kind of carry that tradition on. And I loved it because as a handler, now you're handling a horse and a dog at the same time, and I just love that challenge. And I love horses too, and so a little side note, I couldn't afford really well-trained horses at the time. And so we would take our exercise area for the dogs, and that was my round pen. And I can't tell you the number of rodeos we had in that. I mean, just like you would pay to watch it kind of stuff. It was really a fun time. But we went out, we're very successful, there. And I could have been like, I've got Ranger, who's one of the most, titled and accomplished dogs in the Midwest. He was an English setter. Well, let's breed him and have puppies. Or I could say, a dog named Pancakes, which is a whole other story. It wasn't one of my personal dogs. It was super decorated. Like, he's a short hair. Well, let's breed him. But again, I didn't have the passion of the why. Would you better the breed? Probably. But I don't know what female we'd pair him with. And I just, there are too many moving parts. This whole time, okay, so end of my field trial career, as far as on horseback goes, I'm like, man, you can't do both. As far as you can't keep up both. So who are you? I'm a retriever guy. Okay, well, so go back and go do retrievers, right? So that bring back to my why. So now I'm back in retrievers, still, and I always was doing it, but now I'm focused on it. And this time I hated with all caps, British Labs. Hated them. And the biggest reason being is that the British Labs that I was seeing, they had no motor, no desire, no go, and for a trainer, kind of important things you need to work with, right? How do you train a dog to be a bird dog when he has no interest in birds, right? Or retrieving, or there are too many things. And so I didn't like them. But I believe that all of us are breed prejudiced at some point, right? You just have a breed for whatever reason, an experience, the way they look. You just don't like a certain breed, right? But if you see a good one, you'll go, oh, but I like that one. That's what happened to me. So I have a British Lab puppy come in, and I remember being like, here we go again, bring him out, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this guy's like a rock star, like supernatural, big drive, big. I'm like, okay, well, you know, there's one good one out there, right? Then a week later, from the same breeder, another one comes in, same thing. I'm like, okay. So I call the breeder and introduce myself. And I'm like, man, like, love your dogs. And this has not been my experience with British Labs. So, like, tell me what you're doing. What are you doing different? So he just tells me about, you know, their idea, what they're going for, all that kind of things. And again, obsessive personality. I book a trip overseas. You know, natural, right? Like you just learned about this. You know, you see two good puppies. Oh, let's book a trip and go overseas. Like you have no idea what I'm doing. So book a trip, go overseas. And through this gentleman, he hooked me up with some people that I could meet and that they would bring me to a trial. So I go to this trial. It's in the very north end of Scotland. I've never been out of this country before. And here I am, you know, I'm probably, I don't know, 25, 26, something like that, in a foreign country, no idea who anyone is, right? But I'm just here to learn about these dogs. So we go down this field trial, which is super interesting. The first thing I loved about their field trials are they're on live hunts. Our retriever stuff here in the state is on what we call cold game, you know, so it's just dead birds that we're throwing. We want everything to be the same, everything to be fair, and you're judged on how you handle it. Well, they're like, every retriever on a hunt is going to be different, right? Do you get one that's stone dead 10 yards, you know, from you? Do you get a cripple that sails and is running? Like, you have to handle this, right? So it's on live hunts. Love that part of it. And so I'm kind of like watching as everybody's filtering in, kind of off in the corner, and it's literally a cobblestone house. Like it is as authentic as you can get. And I'm watching, I'm trying to understand what people are saying, which was really tough for me at first. I'm not, you know, used to the accent. And there was a lady that came up to me. Her name was Sam. I'm actually still friends with Sam today. And Sam came up and she goes, you know, good morning, in her, you know, thick accent. And I was like, oh, good morning. And she stopped. She goes, well, you're not from around here, you know. And I go, no, I'm not. So I introduced myself, and she's like, you want a job today? I was like, sure, you know. And she's like, well, you can carry game. I was like, oh, great. And we laugh about it now because they didn't understand that I was like eagerly volunteering to be the grunt of the field trial. So what carrying game is because it's on a live hunt. When they harvest their birds, somebody has to carry them around until the end of the trial. So when we get done with this trial, I've got like, you know, 20, 30 some pheasants around my, like I'm like hunchback, like trying to carry all these game. It was hilarious. But what I loved about it is it put me, instead of back in the gallery, it put me right up with the handlers and the judges. So I'm watching everything right up close. I was loving it. So we start this field trial, and I'm watching the dogs, and everybody is very under control. So these dogs have to walk off lead, at heel, under control. And I'm like, all right, you know, the obedience is very good. Birds start flushing, shots start going off, and they start making their retrieves. I'm like, okay. A little bit into the trial, the first impressive, like my first wow moment was there was a bird that sailed into like this orchard. And the orchard was protected, I assume, because of deer, but protected by a fence. It was 4 strands, and think of a barbed wire fence without barbs. Okay, so it's just a 4-stranded fence. They send this little yellow female. She runs, and you could tell it's sail. Like it was one of those birds that are like, this is probably, you know, a cripple that's gonna run, right? She jumps the 4-stranded wire like 100 miles an hour there, boing, over the fence, gone. It felt like a couple minutes. It was probably 30, you know, seconds, you know, a minute maybe. And she comes back with this rooster in her mouth. And this rooster looks like it's as big as she is because she's a small stature dog. So she goes to jump the fence on the way back. And I'm sure because this extra weight she's carrying, she doesn't clear it. And she lands on the fence. Her back 2 paws are on the 3rd strand. Her front 2 are on the 4th. And she's like back and forth as the fence is wiggling, right? And she keeps her composure, waits until the fence settles down, jumps over the fence, finishes the retrieve. I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah,
you know, like,
impressive.
Yeah, like, okay, you know, that was athletic. So then we keep walking, and you know, again, I'm watching these dogs, not what I'm envisioning, right? Like big motors, boom, 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 but under control. So we're stopped at a point, and the trial, you know, because on these big grounds, like the judges are telling everybody, okay, this is the area we're going to push. This is how I want you to work this part of the field. And there was a dog literally sitting 2 feet from me. and I just happened to be looking at him, and he yawned. Okay, so like dogs do, you know, at the end of a yawn, they're, ew. And when he made that noise, the judge looked at him and he said, he's out. And I was like, what? You know, and so later on what I learned is that no noise of any kind is acceptable. And I'm like, how awesome is that? Because as a waterfowl hunter, as a duck hunter, I don't want to spend 3 minutes, let alone 3 hours with a dog in the blind that's whining, that's being vocal, right? And I truly believe that's genetics. Like, I think you can create that bad habit, but to make a naturally noisy dog quiet is almost impossible. So I love that, right? You can't make a noise to be competing in this thing. Pretty cool.
Got kicked out because he yawned.
Because he yawned, yeah. And you know what? The handler didn't argue at all. Like, I was like, oh, that was kind of harsh. Like, and she's like, thank you. Put the leash on, walked him away. I'm like, okay, you know. The last like big aha moment that I had at the trial was it was a black male, really strong looking dog, and bird sales again. Like, you know, any of us that pheasant hunt know that shot that, you know, one leg drops, sales, you know, you're like, gosh, like he's got his Nikes on, is running 100 miles an hour, right? So they send the dog right away. Like, they're really big about picking these birds up as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So when they see a cripple, they immediately stop, send that dog right now. Boom, so send the dog. So this dog goes, gets in the areas of rooster, gets in there, hunts, and then all of a sudden kind of starts taking, you know, you can't see him, but you can see the you know, kind of grass moving. So you assume he's on the trail, right? So he's, and all of a sudden, hen gets up. The dog does not get phased. Another hen gets up. Now, you know these are different birds because these two were hens, you know, and there was a rooster that got shot. And I'm watching like these birds are getting up like in front of this dog, right? Doesn't get phased. Comes back with that rooster.
Wow.
And I'm just like, my goodness, like you never would see that, you know, at least here, because it's just the way we compete, right? And I'm like, gosh, like this is amazing. So we get back, that was after day one, we get back and again, very north end of Scotland, so there's not a lot of availability. So all of the people that were attending the trial were all staying at this one hotel. And it was a hotel with like a little pub attached to it. So I went up and showered, got changed, and my shower was like a 2x2 box, you know, which actually the funny story is on my last day I'm in there showering and the sewage from the hotel actually came up. Like I looked down and the awful smells. It was terrible. But I'm showering from the day, get dressed, go downstairs, and I walk into the pub. And in the pub, there's this big L-shaped bar. And when I walked in the door, I'm right at the end of like the short part of the L, and I see all the handlers that were handling the dogs sitting at the bar stool. So I'm kind of like looking like, is there a spot for me to sit? 'Cause I'm really wanting to talk to some of these guys. And so I come and I turn around, like turn the corner of the L to where the guys are sitting. I turn that corner and I'm like, I stop and I'm just in awe because all the dogs I just watched compete all day are laying at the bar stools, not, you know, not sniffing each other, not out of control, not, you know, fighting, not bowing up, not anything. I'm used to dogs barking and screaming in a trailer in the parking lot, right? Like I'm not used to this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what more do we want as hunting dogs? We want dogs that have big motors, athletic, wow factor, but then they can go home and do that. Yeah. Be calm, be quiet, be a part of the family, go to the t-ball game, go to soccer practice. Like that's our life, right? A lot of times you get those high-powered dogs, they're not that. Okay, so in this moment, my life is literally changed because now I'm like, here's my why, right? I go back to why I didn't breed before. I didn't have a why. Now I have a why. So I sit down next to a guy. His name's Tom. Great friend of mine. He's an older gentleman. Very accomplished. I didn't know this at the time, but very prestigious, you know, as far as what he's accomplished with his dogs overseas. So we sit and literally all night, I'm just trying to soak up as much information as I can, doing a lot of listening, a lot of understanding what their, you know, ins and outs are and, you know, why they like certain dogs or why they like a certain retrieve. So something about the Scots I learned that night is they really like to drink. I mean, like, they really like to drink. And I was doing my best to, like, keep up to a point, but I'm also wanting to keep my wits about me so I understand what's all going on, and I don't want to be that American that makes a fool of himself, right? So I'm like, absolutely. I'm trying to be, like, the middleman. So as the night goes on, people kind of filter off to bed. Now it's like 2 a.m. at this point. And it was just me, Tom, and like one other person that was kind of left. But I can't remember if he went to the bathroom, but there's something that made it so Tom and I were together just one-on-one. And I was dying to ask him this the whole time, but I finally, we've spent all night talking together. You know, he's had enough drinks from me. He probably feels comfortable with me. And I was like, okay, Tom, I got to ask you this. Because my perception of what a British Lab is up to this point is not what I saw today. I'm like, when we see British Labs in the States, we called them slugs. They had no motor, no drive. You know, they're just not what I saw today. Like, what I saw was a dog that I want. Like, I would own a lot of those dogs. I wouldn't own the dogs that I've seen. You know, so what's the difference? And Tom had a beer that was, I don't know how much, it was a huge beer. And he's looking straight ahead at the bar, takes a big last sip of his beer and puts his beard on. He looks at me with a big grin on his face and he goes, Josh, do you really think we're selling you our good dogs? And like, I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even think about that, you know? And he's like, man, like if we don't want them, they're not going to make our cut. We send them overseas, you know, and then you guys go do whatever you guys are going to do with them. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I dedicated then the next couple of years of my life of building relationships. I would stay at, you know, people's houses there. I would fly people here, spend time at my house, meet my family, train with me, see what I'm looking for in a dog, see what we're doing here, right? Those relationships are why I have the special dogs that I have today, because they're able to get me the best of the best, get them here. I can work with them, I can train them, and make sure that they're special for me. And I mean, that's kind of what led us to be where we are.
What a crazy story.
I know.
Like, I mean, again, man, I said it a little bit earlier, and I'll go back on this. Believing in yourself and taking a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not all the time, but so many times it pans out.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not happen right away. It might be a process, you know, and I think I've alluded to this before, but like a lot of people maybe looked at what we are doing at Hush and they express when we meet them at like a trade show or talk to them or what have you, like, I would love to do that. Or I have this idea, or I want to get into the industry, or, you know, I have these things I'd love to do that you guys are fortunate enough to be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
How do I make it happen? And so much of that is developing your plan B, right? If you're in a job or a career that you don't maybe love, you have aspirations to go somewhere else, identifying a plan B, and then putting in the effort, the time, the commitment to transition easily from your current job to the one that you want to do. Because taking that jump without any planning, preparation, or strategy, oftentimes you wouldn't be able to go across and make like the same kind of money. If you have a family and stuff, you just can't, too much risk.
Mm-hmm.
But if you start to identify your plan B, work on making it your plan A, and that may take 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, the transition becomes easier and doable, and it's not as risky. You're going to take a leap, but you don't have to worry about like bankrupting your family or,
mm-hmm.
you know, becoming homeless or something. It's a much smoother transition. And in your case, like, this was a process over time, and you took the risk. You flew out there. You were putting yourself in an uncomfortable new position in a place you've never been, with people that have a strong accent and a different culture of drinking.
Right.
But all of that was really, to me, like the game changer
mm-hmm.
of how you were able to transition from the trainer to the just like the overarching kind of brand that you've created now.
Mm-hmm.
The UK.
That's right. The UK. The UK and Duck Dogs.
And Duck Dogs
mm-hmm.
stems from that story.
British Labs.
Where those dogs are coming for.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about Brock earlier. He's mm-hmm. kind of like one of your just elite level British Labs. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about like what you love about Brock. What makes him so special?
Yeah. So if you remember back talking about Easton, like he just had something about him. So I call it the X factor, because when a dog has it, like, you can't tell what it is. It's it. Like, there's something that just makes people gravitate towards a certain dog. Brock is one of those dogs. Brock, it doesn't matter what test we're running on. It doesn't matter what hunt we're on. Like, that's the story, like, of the day, is like something about Brock. And he just has this about him. So we were actually, this fall, we're in a tiny little town in Arkansas. Okay. Hunting with, a friend of ours down there, really a great kid, and we just had a hunt, going to this cafe, for breakfast. And we're just kind of in our own little world. And my buddy's name is Joey. And Joey's like, hey, like, listen to this. I'm like, listen what? He's like, the table next to us, listen. They were telling a story about Brock.
No way.
Yeah, telling a story about a retrieve that a buddy that, one of the guy's buddies was on this hunt, and there was this dog from Wisconsin, and he went and did this. And the retrieve that he was talking about was a retrieve that you can count on. Okay, one hand might be an exaggeration. Very few dogs on this earth will make the retrieve that Brock made on this one. And so Brock, this was a speckled belly hunt, and this was probably 3 years ago now. And it was just a big feed. Like, we're in the spin, right? Like, you can't hear the guy next to you talk. I mean, it's just like one of those days, like, this is why you do this, right? Like, this experience. And but it was a big group of people. I got invited, on this hump. There's probably 15, 16 people. So when it happened, it was like I didn't even shoot, because I'm trying to figure out how in the world are we going to pick all these birds up, because it's just like muddy soup. It's this big, kind of, like a big cut rice field, but it's just mud everywhere. And so Brock and I go to work, pick. So we're getting done, and like, Brock's getting tired. I mean, he's just picked up like 22 specks, like boom, 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 boom. And so there's one of the guys goes, there's one more that sailed out there, but I watched him drop. I'm like, all right. Like, he's bringing one back. I'm like, so where was he? And he's like, well, do you see that puddle out there? And I'm like, what puddle? And he's like, and he kind of comes over my shoulder. He's like, that one right there. I'm like, you mean that one, like, way out there? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm not sending him on that. Like, we can go pick that up, with a 4-wheeler or something. And I just turn away, and one of the guys, of the 15 or 16 people, I probably only know 2 of them. One of the guys in the blind goes, there's no way the dog would have got that anyway. And I immediately snap back around, like, well, now we're doing it,
Challenge.
And so anyways, I line him up, get him blind retrieve, right? Because he doesn't know where this is. Line him up, back, he takes off. So he runs for a good while, and all of a sudden he kind of starts veering off, to the left, just slightly. So I stop him, and I give him a cast. And when I casted him and he turned, I was like, oh my gosh, he's a long way, So he keeps going, and he was like, I would have let him go, but I'm looking at him going, you're a really, really long way, And so I always keep in my hat, I always have a white cloth that I tape, or not tape, but I usually button underneath my hat, because for my dogs to get way out there, you think about when your dog turns back to you and you're going to direct them, you're doing everything in your power to hide in the elements, right? Like the best camo, the best blinds, the best everything, and then we expect our dog from 100 yards away to turn and pick us out, and then take a direction with our hand of everything around us. Like, it's kind of a ridiculous thought even. So for my dogs to get way out there, I'll take my hat off and flip it around so it's white underneath, and I can give them a little better aid of where to go. But he was so far away, I'm like, I'm going to stop him again, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to communicate with him. He's that far away. So I give him a long tweet, he slows down, stops. And when he's looking at me, like, I'm like, this is the farthest retrieve he's ever had. I knew it from that point. So I gave him, a back cast again, just to kind of give him that confidence, keep pushing back. But I knew I probably didn't have any more communication with him. So he's going, and all of a sudden his body moves, and you kind of see him like go like hard to the right, but man, he's a speck out there. Like, he is a dot, and like nobody can see. So my buddy Rob Snell, who owns Gun Dog Supply, was with me. He has great guy. You got to meet him. So he's a great guy because he has never once pulled the trigger, but he loves taking photography of waterfowl so much. He will be the first one up. He will be the most chipper happy guy, and he just does the camera. Like, he just loves it. But he's got a mega lens on. And so we can't tell like what he's doing, if he's coming back to us, if not. And then all of a sudden, like after time, we're like, oh, he is coming back to us. And somebody goes, does he have the bird? And you just hear Rob go, yep. And he was so exhausted when he got back. Like, he literally handed me the bird and laid down. Like, he's just like, he's done, right? So because we had to know, we took the side by side and we hit the odometer, and we did a trip out there. It was 26 yards short of a half mile.
Wow.
A half mile.
Unbelievable.
Right? And so we knew we were almost to a half mile. We could see where he turned off and where that bird was, just from his tracks in the mud. And so we just drove it off until it clicked a half mile, and then we walked it back to just see how far it was. 26 yards short of a half mile.
Wow.
It's incredible. Like, you can't fathom how far that is until you're in that moment. I mean, it is one of the most impressive things that I've ever seen. He made one more retrieve in North Dakota where we sailed a bird. He had to go down a big hill, up over a gravel road, which we could see. I wasn't going to send him over a road that obviously was going to be dangerous, but I could see the gravel road over the gravel road, down over the next hill, and then we lost him. Comes back over the hill with that honk, and we figured that one was probably about 600, 700 yards. I mean, just like, it's incredible. Like, it takes a heart that you can't teach to do that kind of stuff. And he's just got, again, it's just it. Like, there's just something about him. Strike. He's got it. Like, he has a crazy story to begin with, but like, his thing, you would never guess that he's as talented as he is because of how calm he is. Like, if he was sitting here, he could be sitting here. He's not, but he could be sitting here right here next to us as we're doing the podcast. And he'd be laying here completely calm and quiet, content in his own world, like the ideal house dog, right? But then to watch him go do some of the things that he does in the field, I mean, so I have a notebook that I keep with me. I travel with me every hunt. Afterwards, I mark down with tallies how many retrieves. So I have a Brock page, a Strike page, a Bud page, a Clyde page, a Bracken page, and just a page for all my dogs, because I want to keep track of how many retrieves they have. So I have, ducks, geese, dove, the whole thing, right? Because when we talk, back at the beginning, when we talk about that last day, those are things that are going to be very impactful to me. I'm going to be able to reflect on that and be like, gosh, like, I gave him this life. Like, he had 3,000 retrieves. Like, that's something that, like, you can think about it, but like, that's going to be very meaningful to me. And then what I've started to do just in the last couple of years is, because these dogs, like, they've been making these unbelievable retrieves. So I've started writing down. So on Onyx, I can map out, point to point.
Yeah.
So it's not exact all the time, but it's pretty close because I can look at it. How far was that retrieve? And I'll write it down. Yeah. Because like, I look back and I was like, gosh, like, I don't have my notebook here. I wish I did now. But like, gosh, Strike had a blind that he ran last year that was 524 yards. Like, that's crazy. It's really crazy. Is. And so, but now I can keep that and I know it, right? And so I write those down for all the dogs now. And man, it's just, this little stuff, it's just, it's why I enjoy being in the field so much. It's just, I look at these dogs and there's nothing, literally nothing on earth that they would rather be doing than going and working and being present in that moment. And if we could all learn to be more like that, we would all live way happier lives.
Ain't that the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The last few days I've been hanging out with Josh and Whitney and his entire team, and really just trying to capture some of the essence of their business and their brand and their passion. And we'll be putting together a video. It could already be up. Maybe it'll be up here shortly, but it'll coincide nicely with the podcast, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the work they're doing. Dave is handled largely a lot of the obedience-based kind of training.
Mm-hmm.
He's been with you for 10 years.
Yeah.
Really passionate also with what he does. Super passionate shed hunter. So he's got a lot of the capabilities for the shed training for those that are, more kind of inclined to do that than maybe the waterfowl stuff. And then, Josh is working a lot with the more advanced dogs. And so I got to spend time with Brock, with Strike, with Solo, with Bracken, kind of with your entire like dude pack of studs.
My crew.
Your crew.
Yep.
And the thing that just is really fun to watch as an observer is, not only like the relationship that you have with each dog, but how they respect one another in their little pack. And man, I mean, I think we can all attest to the waterfowl hunt we've been on with a couple dogs that are probably a little on the whiny side, not necessarily staying put, breaking early. I mean, we've all been there. And to sit back with 4 or 5 dogs completely still, completely calm, and you can say one of their names, you can literally say Strike, and he will break free from his place and come and heel at your side while the other dogs stay there. And then you can give him a back command if you're sending him on a blind, or you can throw, a dummy and send him into the lake at your house for a retrieve, all while the other dogs stay completely stationary. It's really incredible. It's so cool to see that. And also just to see like the capabilities of what the dogs can get to. Now, you'll be the first one to attest. It takes time, it takes discipline, it takes practice, it takes mistakes, corrections, but it's certainly doable. And you have several examples of these finished dogs that are really exceptional. And to your point too, then they're just so chill. Like when they're not working, they're just chilling.
Yeah,
it's really fun to watch that progression, and gets me excited about like the possibility now that we're going to be entering the phase of, basic obedience and kind of building the foundation. The other thing that jumped out to me too, just how important that obedience component is to the finish work.
It's everything.
It's really, really stood out today when you see it in person. And I think that's probably an area that gets rushed through in the training protocol. It's like rushing through obedience because it's maybe not that fun when you're training your dog to like work on putting them on the leash and, heel and sit and kind of like the basic stuff. Not as fun. Everybody probably wants to get to like the trained retrieve stuff or the introduction of the bird and gun, things like that are more enjoyable from like you as an individual. But it really shines when these dogs get to that finish level of how well the obedience plays into the finish work.
Well, it is everything. And is it boring? It's mind numbing. I mean, it is not enjoyable to sit there on lead and go like, honest to God, bless Dave's heart. The dude, like when he has a whole group of obedience dogs in, he'll spend an entire day doing obedience over and over and over and over and over again with all these dogs. But it's just obedience. It's come, sit, heel, come, sit, heel, place. I mean, just like it is not enjoyable. So we live in a day where everyone can get whatever you want with a click and 2-day shipping. Can't do that here, right? That's one of the things that I really, really preach is when you get a dog and you have these goals and you have these aspirations, let's just say you want to take the dog through the whole thing, which not everybody does, and that's totally cool. Let's just say the whole thing, completely finished, blind retrieves, hand signals, completely finished dog, okay? Well, you're never finished because that dog is going to get through hunting season, and hunting season naturally unravels training season because you go from controlled environments and situations to uncontrolled. And when uncontrolled situations come up, that's when bad habits start. That's when your training starts to unravel and you have to come clean it back up. So the one thing I really preach is I want you to fall in love with the process, not with the result. Because if all you're looking for is a result, and that's all you're trying to push for, one, when you do finally achieve it, you're not going to have loved and appreciated every step along the way that took it. Like, I want you to have a party. I want you to, hey, you've conquered sit. Like, don't just move on and do the next thing. Like, appreciate you and the dog did this together. That was a teamwork thing. This was an accomplishment, right? Pat yourself on the back, smile about it, enjoy it. Okay, now let's move on. But you're going to come back and revisit that. all my advanced dogs, which you got to see some of my young advanced dogs I have in for training. First off, they're killing it. Love watching that. But it's obedience. We had one of the guys that own one of the dogs. I won't use the name. He came in, watched his dog work, and the first thing I do is an obedience session. The first thing every one of my advanced dogs do every single day is an obedience session. And he's like, man, like, you do that every day? I'm like, yep. He's like, why? He did that last summer. I'm like, well, he's doing it this summer too. Because if you look at everything we do, right, whether it's lining you up for a blind, whistle sitting at a distance, giving you a hand direction and a cast, it's all obedience. That's all that this is. It is just obedience at a more advanced level. And so it's so important, but it's the part that everybody wants to rush through. And I think the reason everyone wants to rush through it, to be honest, is social media, for the most part. Everybody wants to have something to show off on social, and it's not fun showing off heel, sit, and come.
Yeah.
It's fun showing off a big water entry into the water. It's fun showing off a blind retrieve and a dog taking a cast and a handstand. Like, it's fun showing that part of it off. But I'm telling you, you don't get that without that obedience. And it's the part that everyone wants to go through because it's so boring. But that's also where you build a relationship with that dog. There is not a more intimate way for you to connect with the dog and communicate with the dog than through a leash. You have everything that you feel, everything that you know, if you're tense, if you're upset, if you're sad, the dog feels that through that leash. And so there's a connection there between you and that dog that you can't get anywhere else. And so having that time and really making sure that you spend time there is really, really important.
Yeah, that's so apparent, man. It really is. And the just witnessing, like I mentioned earlier, like the finished dog work, it's something special, man. Like, I love the interaction with working dogs and their handlers, whether it's hounds chasing cats or bears, whether it's a great short hair that's, hunting down chuckers in big canyon country, waterfowl. Like, there's just something really unique and special about that. And I think if you've ever owned your own dog and hunted behind them or worked them in any kind of category, you feel that, you love that, you yearn for that. And no doubt, like, it comes through with the work that you guys do with your training dogs. It's been fun to see, man. Talk a little bit more about, like, the Retriever roadmap. So obviously you got to the business to where it's like been able to be successful. You've got a great team of people. Whitney's heavily involved on the puppy side, but training dogs from a business standpoint, like, you and Dave only have so much time in the day. Like, you can't keep training more dogs unless you built out a team of more trainers. Walk us through, like, why Retriever roadmap and, the whole idea behind that.
Yeah. So, over the years, we've just had more and more demand for training, right? So more people want to get in. It's so interesting. I'd say the majority of the dogs we get in for training now are either flown in or driven long distances. Like, it's not that it's abnormal for us to get a Minnesota, Wisconsin dog in, but we went from that's all we ever got in to now having a dog flown in from British Columbia, Alaska, like, it's pretty cool, and what's really cool is we have, like, heavy Texas, clientele base, heavy Montana, heavy California. It's like the guy in Texas, it's dove season. Like, my dog needs to be here September 1st for doves, and they need to hunt this way. Where your guy in South Dakota is like, what's a dove? Like, I just want a dog to go pheasant hunt and go bring my roosters back. Like, so even though they're a Labrador, they do so many things so well. And so it's really digging into, okay, all right, so who are you? What do you hunt? What do you need the dog to do? And let's work on that. So it's kind of an interesting thing there. But we could get bigger, right? Like, we have a waiting list right now that I could fill 4 buildings of what I have right now. 4 buildings. Why won't we do it? Because as soon as that happens, I lose the personal touch. I can't do stuff like this, but I certainly can't, like you saw me with multiple clients today, sit down and talk with people about their dog. I'm going to talk to you about your strengths and weaknesses. I'm going to talk to you about, like, what we need to do to elevate this dog to the next level. I want to talk to you about, like, what I think this dog is capable of or what I think he's not capable of. Like, if we grow, I wouldn't even see that dog, let alone be able to talk to the owner about, what it is, because there's just not enough time in the day. I don't want to lose that. Like, I really feel like that's what makes us, right? So I don't want to lose that. But I also wanted to help more people. And I was really struggling with how I do that. Quite frankly, Duck Dogs, the podcast, was part of that. I wanted to be able to, have a bigger platform to be able to help, more people and, hopefully take nuggets from that and, go with it. But what happened is there's just more questions, right? So more people sending you questions, social media, email of like, hey, I need help here. I don't understand why my dog's doing this, or like, where do I go from here? And just, it got to the point, it's like, we have to do something. And so it took me years to do it, but we developed Retriever Roadmap. And what we did is, the whole idea behind the roadmap part of the name is, we all want to get from point A puppy, to somewhere along the line, right? So you choose where your ending part is. Like, I want a dog that's completely, finished and elite. Well, you might want a dog that just simply sits, stays, comes, and will bring a bird back the 2 times you go hunting, right? Or somewhere in between, like wherever you want, you choose that. But if we are both going to the same spot, and we start in Los Angeles, we're driving to New York, we're probably going to take different routes to get there, right? Like, one of us might want to take the interstate the whole way because it's the fastest. One of us might take scenic routes because we're going to enjoy, the ride a little more. One of us might do in between, right? Take a detour here to see a state park. Like, we're going to take different routes, right? But the important part is that whatever route is best for you and your dog, that what that looks like. And the problem with books and DVDs is that it's like, okay, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. Well, no dog is a cookie cutter. Like, I can tell you, we have 35 dogs in right now. We have 35 different personalities, different strengths and weaknesses, and we have to do different things with each of those dogs to get the most out of them. It's easy for me to say that because we've worked with hundreds and hundreds of dogs. If you're sitting there with your second dog, your first dog, how are you supposed to know that, right? So what we do is we take puppy and say, hey, here's my favorite way of doing it. Watch this video. Let's do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But if your dog doesn't handle this well, try it this way. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, find what is best for you, right? Give you options, right? Is your dog super soft? Is your dog super hard-headed? Is your dog in between, right? Like, let's find the best route for you. But the idea here is that through video, we can better teach people. I think people have just been conditioned to, whether it's, YouTube, social media, TV, like we're geared now to be visual learners. This helps that, because too often I was trying to talk through people on the phone of like, okay, you got to do this. Well, then they come back and like, I tried doing that. It didn't work. I'm like, how did you set it up? And it was like completely different than what I tried. So I didn't articulate it well enough. But if they watch it, they can rewatch and get it right? Go conquer that, take the next step. And we made it super, super affordable, I think, mainly because I wanted people to have access to this. I'm not looking to, become a millionaire off this thing. I just want this to be available for people to go home and be successful. I personally, I love it when people train their own dogs. A lot of times people are sheepish when they tell me, like a guy today, I don't know if you heard this or not. A guy today was picking up a puppy and he's like, well, I think I'm going to train him myself. And he was almost ashamed to be saying it. And I'm sure it's because he's looking at me that this is my profession and I probably want this pup to come back in for training. But I love when people do their own work, because you are going to go through the peaks and valleys. You're going to go through the ebbs and flows, and you are going to see the hurdles. You're going to overcome it yourself. Like, if I do it, that's one thing. You pick up a dog that's gone through it. But then when it happens in the field, you don't know how to get over it because you didn't go through the training. You don't have the appreciation, more times than not, of what it took to get the dog there, right? So then it's just a different level of understanding. I think so many people have the pride of going through this themselves now. And so Retriever Roadmap gives you the tools as far as the knowledge and the guidance to do it. You still have to do the work, but at least now you have an aid of like, hey, here's how you do this. Oh, that didn't work? Okay, we'll try it this way. Do you want to use an e-collar? Do you not? We have both routes. Do you want to go through a train retrieve? Do you want to go through hold conditioning? Do you not want to do this? Like, here's this. Like, a lot of different options. I'm really proud of it.
You should be. You guys did a great job.
Thank you.
You could tell the amount of effort and work that went into the production of it, because it's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of filmed footage. The other thing I thought was cool, you didn't use finished dogs on the whole thing. You used dogs that were in the same line that the class represents. So if it was a puppy obedience thing, you're showing young puppies.
Which made it very interesting.
Oh, totally. But you're showing the dogs that are literally going through it It wasn't like, here's a finished dog and this is what it should look like. And so in the videos, there's moments when things aren't quote unquote perfect, because guess what? That's what we're going to run into when you're training a dog. I thought that was super interesting and valuable. Just like the way it walks you through step by step from literally the day you pick up a puppy all the way through an advanced finished dog that would represent the likes of a Brock or a Strike and everything in between. And you can take it at your own pace. There are some cool components of like the form and the community aspect I think is great as more people kind of get jumped in. So I've had time to kind of go through, I'd say 75% of the content, even though this was, months ago I started watching it just to kind of observe and see what it is. But I'm excited for my wife and I to utilize it and leverage it. And I don't know what I have as a goal for the dog yet. I just, time will tell. I could see myself fall in love with the training process and maybe trying to see how far we could take it. It's interesting because when we first got Deuce, the internet was not existent. Like, dude, Hush didn't exist. Instagram was not around. I think like MySpace might have been a thing at the time, but there was no online stuff. Like there was no great training videos on YouTube or any kind of waterfowl content. It was all like outdoor TV or the old, hardcover books or VHS tapes that my dad had laying around. So much has changed, and I'm going to be a novice going through this process. But that's like exciting, is trying to, learn this new thing. And, bird hunting, whether it's waterfowl or upland, is such a great entry point for people that are just wanting to get into hunting. I think most all of us started our journey there. I can vividly remember being with my dad, hunting pheasant and ducks and geese, laying in fields as just a kid, not even carrying a gun, and then packing around like an old single shot 12 gauge because my dad was preaching that you got to have one shot, you better make it good. So slow down, take your time. The thing kicked like a damn mule because it was so lightweight. But I killed most all my first birds with the single shot 12 gauge and really developed like a passion for bird hunting. And it's something that my dad and I still connect on today. And I'm really looking forward to getting back into doing more of that. Even though like the predominant amount of stuff we do is Western mid game, right? Like that takes up a lot of our time. So it'll be super curious how this kind of plays out. But the Retriever Roadmap is really well done. You guys have done awesome work. And then you continue to add to it, right? Like you're getting feedback and updating training modules and answering questions that you're seeing populate as a common theme. And I think that's what's great, is like it's a living, breathing program. It's not like the static thing that's going to collect dust.
Yeah, and that was really important to us, so that we continue to grow and continue to build, because there's always going to be something else to capture. There's always going to be something else, to teach people, and things that we run into. I mean, shoot, I don't train the same today that I did 12 years ago. Yeah. I have to evolve, and I get better, and I change, and I tweak, and we're going to do the same with the program. It's going to continue to grow. I'm really looking forward to the hunting side of it, of like the in the field, on the fly training, or like what we do to make dogs successful in the field. That's coming, which is super exciting to me. There's just so many things. And then we have so many great partners, industry partners that honestly, for some reason, I don't even know the reason all the way through, but they want to be a part of it. So they're offering like major discounts to members of this thing because they see the community feel. They understand that this is more than just, this isn't a click and a purchase. This is a community, and I am so proud of that community. I did not understand the significance of that. I had a few people be like, "Oh, like this forums." I'm just not a forum guy, right? So forum's gonna be great, blah blah blah. I'm just like, oh, whatever. Like I'm more focused on the content. That's my favorite part of the whole thing, because when someone asks a question, a lot of times I'm busy during the day and I'll get to this stuff in the evening. Sometimes I have 6, 7, 8, 9 people have answered the question for me before I've even seen it and had a chance to answer it for somebody. And it just makes me smile, because all these people are like, "Oh, I saw the same thing. This is what I did to make me successful." And someone's like, "Oh, like I saw it too. That's cool. That worked for you. This is what worked for me." And it's like, well, here's your roadmap, right? Like now you have all these other branches of this road that all of a sudden start forming. It's like, oh, I didn't see this path here. Oh, I could also take that one. It's really a cool thing. And I mean, people are like networking as far as like understanding where they live and like linking up and training together. And it's really, really neat to see how this whole thing has kind of come together.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that. And it'll be cool to watch it continue to evolve and grow as you get more feedback and more people are using it. But it's great, man. Like whether or not you have a brand new puppy or a dog that's 4 years old, but you're looking to try to like get, him to or her a little bit different level, all of this would be applicable. And what a cool community to build and be a part of, and really speaks volumes to what you and Whitney have been able to accomplish throughout your short career. You guys are both still super young and lots of more to give to the community, but it's been a pleasure to be a guest in your place of business and kind of watch you guys do your thing just as a casual observer, as I'm taking shots and filming and trying to capture the essence of what Riverstone Kennels is.
Yeah, well, we've loved having you guys here. And what I think is so cool about this, it's just the beginning.
It is.
We've got a long way ahead of us, a long road ahead of us, but this is where the fun starts, and I cannot wait for you guys to, as much as I want you guys to stay around for as long as I'd love for you to be here for another couple of weeks, when you guys take that puppy home and now it's family.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that for you.
Be money.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about this, but do we want to give out the Hush discount code for anybody interested in subscribing to the Retriever Roadmap and trying it out?
Yeah, for sure. So what we did is we set up Hush22. So just all caps, Hush22. And that will get you $100 off the initiation fee.
Sweet.
To get into that. So we felt like it was already very affordable, and now we're going to make it even more affordable. Again, you guys, what this really is we just want you to be successful. We just want to help share our knowledge and our tools to go, let you take a next step with your dog, whether that's just being obedient on the leash so you can go to the kids' t-ball game, all the way through being a more efficient hunter in the field. So use Hush22 at checkout and save yourself $100.
Where can the people find you on all the socials?
Okay, so first off, Retriever Roadmap, www.retrieverroadmap.com. Riverstone Kennels, riverstonekennels.com. And then on social, we have Riverstone Kennels. We have Duck Dogs, again, DUK. And so you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere you're listening to your podcasts. And then also with Retriever Roadmap on social as well. So you can search us in any one of those boxes and find us.
If you guys are interested, you liked more, you like the content talking about gun dogs, hunting, upland, Josh puts out an awesome podcast. He's got a super cool story about Strike and how Strike landed from Scotland in Wisconsin and kind of his first days in U.S. soil. This is worthy of a listen. I'd highly encourage that one. And the puppy we're picking up has special meaning, man. Strike is the sire, and Sunny is the dame. And walk us through the quick lineage before we wrap this thing up.
Yeah, so if you remember back to the story of when I lost Easton, Jeff Lander, who's the person that connected us, had a dog named Sage. And Sage would be Sunny's mom, so your puppy's grandmother.
Yep.
And so I lost Easton, couldn't bring myself to go train. And the first day that I went back, probably again a week, 10 days later, something like that, I went up there and I just told the guys, that work for me, I said, guys, like, this is going to be hard. Just load a trailer, and I just got to go by myself. Normally I have someone to come with me to help aid and kind of keep those. I just knew today was going to be tough. So get up there, a lot of tears, still raw, right? And so finally bring myself to, I have my advanced dogs with me, stuff is set up. I didn't load the trailer, so I don't know who anybody is. And Jeff currently owns Sage. He also owned a new puppy named Luke, and he was having to move into a new residence. And where he was moving to, he was only allowed to have one dog with him. And so we were kind of going back and forth before I lost Easton. And he's like, man, like, I can't have two dogs. I'm like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And so he decided that he was going to rehome Sage. And I was like, well, at least let me finish her training, and then I'll help find a great home for her. She's a fantastic dog. I love her to death. And at this point, I've only owned males. I've never owned a female before. And so I get set up, go to the trailer, open up the first door, and that little head pops out, and that's Sage. And she's just all wiggly. I'm like, all right, so I bring her out, and she just knew something was wrong. Like, she's like leaning into me. She's like trying to make eye contact with me. Like, she could just tell something was wrong. And so I went through, and she ran the most flawless day of training that I've ever seen her do. And every time back, it was almost like, are you happy now? Like she was just trying to make me happy, trying to make me feel better. And so on the last retrieve, she came, she brought it back to my side. I took it from her, and I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me. She had these big brown eyes. She's looking at me with this sweet little, heart. I called Jeff literally right there, still standing next to her. I said, Jeff, I'll take her. I'll buy her from you. And that's how I ended up with Sage. And Sage turned into, so she was 46 pounds, so little. She's the best Canada Goose dog that I have, or I had, I should say. She, like this little dog, turned into a middle linebacker. Like when there was a cripple in the decoys, all my buddies like, wait, and they get their phones out and they want to videotape it, because when I send her, it's whoom, and barrel rolls, and she just had a heart that you couldn't teach. So so Sunny is actually my brother's dog. My brother needed to have a dog from Sage because he loves Sage so much. And then now we have the next generation.
What is also cool is Sunny came from Sage, and the dad was Brock.
That's right. Yeah, so you've got Brock and Strike,
right,
which to me really makes this even more special, because here you have two of the dogs that I really deem as very special. What's kind of neat about having you here this week is you watch me work solo, you watch me work Tucker, I think, right? And when I bring these dogs in from overseas, like they're with me for a minimum a year through training, and that's my time to deem, are you special?
Yep.
Or are you great? Or are you good? Only the special dogs get to stay.
Yep.
If you're great, that's awesome. But that means you don't check a couple of my boxes, which means I'm going to find a great forever home with you, which you will be a dog of a lifetime for somebody. But for me, I can't produce the best of the best puppies unless I am critical on where are your flaws, where are your faults. Every dog has them. Where are they? And where do you fit on my scale, right? And I've had to break my own heart a number of times, because I can't own dogs to own dogs, right? Like I think I own 11 of them right now. Like I can't just keep acquiring them. I'm the crazy dog guy. But, those dogs go home, and like Herbie was the last one that just broke my heart, because like I just adored that dog, but he just wasn't what I needed. Herbie flew off in his private jet, lives on a 30,000 acre ranch. Like Herbie's doing just fine. It broke my heart.
Totally.
Herbie's fine.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff, it's you have to be picky. But like you start dialing down to, okay, so there's Brock. So you're getting Brock through Sunny. Now you get Strike, and you know how I feel about both those dogs. Yeah. Like that's how you have to have special dogs to get special puppies.
And on top of that, man, the fact that Jeff's dog originally, Sage, ties into this, and he's the one that really was so profound in making this all come together, is special in my heart.
Totally.
And so it's something that we're so excited about. We take our little guy home tomorrow on an airplane, so cross your fingers. Wish me luck. I have anxiety a little bit, just based on like, let's hope he doesn't whine and bark and poop and pee the whole time. But we're optimistic. We're going to tire him out, but a whole new chapter will begin for us tomorrow. So I can't thank you guys enough for hosting us. Can't thank you guys enough for the friendship. Looking forward to making a lot more great memories out in the field, and just seeing where our little guy develops into.
Yeah, man. We love you guys. We can't wait to see where this goes. And I'm looking forward to many more hunts and fly fishing trips and everything else that we have in store for us in our future. So it's all good stuff.
Absolutely, brother. Josh Miller, folks. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.